Hello and welcome to 2 Pints of Maggots and a Packet of Hooks, the fishing podcast. I can't believe already this is episode 4 of series 3. This is the 19th episode since we began last year, early last year. As always, we go through the press pack. We'll talk about what I've seen online that's caught my eye and in the weeklies. It's short and sweet, this episode, because we've not quite got the monthly magazines on our doorstep just yet. So there's nothing to review from that respect. But of course, we will delve into the archives. I've gone way back to 1996. With articles from Match Fishing magazine. So we'll take a look at that as well. Of course, I mentioned the big chat and the tackle shed, anything that's caught my eye, anything that I've used and abused, if you like, and that you might find interesting also. But the big news is this will be the very last podcast in its format. I've decided that I need to shake things up a little bit. We're at the right time now. We're nearly 20 episodes in of the same format with the past, present, future piece with our various guests. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the big chat with a new segment, which is going to be called The Forum. And the Forum is going to involve a number of anglers, not just one-to-one. We're going to have a number of former guests and some new ones, of course, as well. And I'd love your participation in this, please, because we're going to have numerous anglers and of course we need subjects to talk about. So I'd love it if the listeners could provide the subjects, and the plan will be it should be so easy for me. You're going to get a number of anglers in a room and I just want to get the ball rolling and let them talk amongst themselves. We can talk about the state of the tackle industry. We can talk about new items of tackle coming out. We can talk about magazine features, big match wins, various tactics, loads and loads of stuff that we can get stuck into. So that's really going to be the way forward. They might not be as regular as they are now. They could be quarterly, they could be bi-monthly, they could be weekly if they really take off. I have no idea. But what I want to do is I feel that it's time to evolve the podcast a little bit further and bring different guests together and see how they interact, because I think you've probably heard enough of me now chatting to these top anglers. So without further ado, and later on in the show I will reveal who are going to be my guests on the first forum, but for now, without further ado, it's the press pack. Let's dive then into the metaphorical press pack. And I think for now, we'll kick off thinking about social media, specifically YouTube. Two things that I've watched on YouTube recently that I think could offer good value. I've mentioned in the past around these subscription channels, and the one that I plumped for was called The Edge, and that's the one that's hosted, ran by Lee Kerry and Rob Wotton. Well, the latest episode was well worth a view. It's following Rob on a live match. It was filmed earlier on this month at the beginning of March. And it's proper pellet fishing, basically. I think he comes third overall in the match. The match was won by bigger fish that clearly balled up on the other side of the lake. But he has a great weight of fish, 70 plus pounds of very small F1s, only sort of pound and a half, nothing bigger than 2 pounds. So busy day. And just shows you, how to approach hard pellets in winter or early spring when the fishing is still difficult. And it was a brilliant, I think it was an hour and a half, really, really good video. And it was just one of those where I thought, have you got time to watch a fishing video that's as long as most films? Normally you'd say no, but on this occasion it was compelling viewing and really gave me some good ideas about just concentrating on one line, really. It wasn't rotating that much. It was very interesting anyway. So The Edge, latest, is the live match with Rob on the box. Next up was Winning Ways. So that's the combo of Jamie Hughes and Andy May. There's a bit of a theme here, isn't there, that these top anglers are teaming up. And it was a shortish clip, 20 odd minutes, where they've had a bit of a rant. Ironically, I think they call it their podcast, which is it's just like a short clip. It's nothing like this format. But they discuss sponsorship, and I found it fascinating on two fronts. how both the guys went from regular jobs to full-time angling, but also the stuff that they get asked and the things that they hear about them being in a privileged position, etc., etc. And they tell you that that's not the case. You know, massive gambles were taken to take the plump and go into coaching and full-time angling, if you wish. And obviously now it's paying dividends. They're winning big matches, good consultancies with Rather Outdoors, the owner of Preston's and Matrix, so doing very well for themselves and absolutely, you know, fully deserved. But yeah, just some of those questions that they get. It's a strange one, isn't it? You know, there's people want to be sponsored or be affiliated with a brand, you know, regardless of their results, which is strange. You've got to earn a sponsorship. You know, you've got to earn. It's a two-way thing. Is what's the brand going to get from you, and what are you going to get from the brand? It's not a case of just, you know, I want to tell everybody and I want to wear all the same clobber or have all the same matching luggage, etc., etc. And it seems to me that that's what some people focus on more, the kudos, rather than their actual ability and match results. So yeah, you see it all the time. And being involved with a bait company myself, although they have tailed off lately, the amount of sponsorship requests that come through on the emails is it's just bizarre, really. And you ask, okay, yep, fine. Well, what were you going to bring to the table? And well, nothing. I'll wear your t-shirt. You know, it's not going to work. So yeah, I thought that was a really good video, or podcast as they call it, where they've had it's more Andy May having a bit of a rant and then Jamie Hughes dipping in and out, but it was quite good. Whilst they actually catch a few fish as well. Into then the latest angling times right in front of me, and the biggest UK zander brace in history. What it says here, a new chapter was written in the predator fishing history books on the last day of the river season. A chap called Andy Black banked 2 zander, weighing 34 £8 ounce between them. That's a 19 14 ounce and an 18 6 ounce fish. Now this frustrates me. It just says from a Midlands river. Now I'm going to guess the Severn. Well, that's just me guessing. But why not name it? The river season's shut now. It's not like people are going to go down there and target them unless they're poaching. I don't get this part of specimen angling, the secrecy that you know, I want this to myself sort of thing, and I don't want to share. I want to share my success, but I'm not going to tell you how or where I did it. And that I find that a little bit strange. There might be reasons behind it. You know, why you wouldn't, if it's a syndicate, of course, or you don't want every Tom, Dick and Harry traipsing over there trying to catch one fish and putting a lot of pressure on the venue. I get all that, but this is a river. You know, the fish can be anywhere in a river and they're shut. So I really don't understand that. And just that side of specimen fishing does concern me slightly. It's just a little bit odd. What else have we got? Appeal for fishing coaches. You know, there's lots and lots of these charities now popping up that are looking for coaches to help them out and drive the sport. It's all power to the sports arm. It's all good for me. Get people on the bank, get them into the sport, and guarantees our future. Of course, match results are in this week's paper, and 2 big recent match results that stand out for me. And if you're on the Facebook page, you'd have seen it. I said congratulations to Nick Speed for winning the Golden Reel final. One of those biggies that have eluded him for some time. He's finally got that on his mantelpiece now. Nick was one of our very first guests back last year, and it was a brilliant interview. It really was. If you've not listened to it yet, do go and have a listen back on that one. Episode 3, Series 1. Such a thinking angler. Brilliant guy, well deserved. And of course, a fantastic festival win down at Whiteacres from Adam Richards, our last guest on the last episode. And the good thing was it was the Frenzy Festival, which is obviously the firm that he consults for as well. So both of those results are in this week's paper, of course. Loads and loads of big catch results, lots of last minute river catches, some giant chub, £7, 12 ounce from the Severn. You've got a £15, 10 ounce barbel from the Ooze, which is interesting. Obviously, the Trent usually throws up a few, but this one caught my eye barbel-wise. New river record for the Ribble. Being a northern lad myself, fished the Ribble a few times, but never for barbel, at £17, 9 ounce. And let's see if he states where. It just says Jason Huckler fishing a vortex bait smoked salmon pellet. Battled with it for several minutes with his son by his side. Yep, again, doesn't say. The stretch, it's shut. No one's going to go down there and chase that fish again unless they're poaching. Loads of predators coming out, so all good stuff. Now, good article, page, what we on Angling Times, page 14. It says, get off to a great start this spring. Steve Ringer talking through the card in terms of getting your rigs up to scratch, changing your lines, your pole elastic, etc. Watching out for the air pressure and air temperature. Well, that's been blown out of the water today. As I currently speak, it is snowing outside, whereas last week it was 19 degrees. It's very, very bizarre. Not unknown. I've remember snowing April before today, but yeah, a little bit strange. So it's almost like taking a step back for your angling. Maybe you was thinking about beefing up your hook lengths and your elastics, and it might just be one to hold out for a week or so. And take note of Steve Ringer's article, of course, but maybe introduce it in a week or two. Moving on then to the match fishing I mentioned before. June 1996, £2.50 at the time. The editor was Roger Mortimer. It kicks off with tackle and tactics. Like everything really mid-90s, a lot of natural fishing. You know, the commercials were only just getting going around this sort of period. So a lot of natural fishing going on. But there was one little piece here which I completely forgot about, and it was called the Browning Masters. And what they used to do in match fishing was they would choose 6 anglers every month. I think it was for 6 months, and then they would have a final of 36 anglers somewhere, sponsored by Browning. So it was actually the magazine, Roger Mortimer, picking the anglers for various achievements they've had recently. Well, on this month, who have they chosen? Brian Bennett, Gabbling Map Starlet's angler, still the man to beat on the Avon. And then it gives a list of some of his recent achievements, which qualified him for this Browning Masters. So essentially, it's an invite-only event, but you've got to earn your stripes to get there. So Brian Bennett, Steve Hemingway, of course, England International. He'd been winning on the Soar Valley Winter League and the Thames Championship. Paul Hughes, Maver, so from up my way in the northwest. Frank Barlow, legend, sadly no longer with us, but at the time probably one of the biggest names in match fishing. At that weekly column, Angler's Mail, he was invited. Richard Taylor, Delcac, young lad at the time. I remember Richard Taylor, he was about the same age as me, and he was an England youth international at the time, but he'd been fishing with, by the look of it, Delcac, taking a few big scalps from the Daiwa Dorking team. And also they have an invite only for a Club Angler of the Year. So if you win the Club Angler of the Year, you would get invited. Anyway, on to the main features. And this one that caught my eye in page 50. It's called People Watching. And it says, watching stars in action is one of the best ways of learning more about unfamiliar methods. Match fishing editor Roger Mortimer reckons it's what you take note of that dictates how much you learn. Now, this is talking about bank watching, spectators. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm looking at these images from 1996, and some of these are big matches. Obviously, the John Smiths on the Avon. This Browning Masters, actually, there's some spectators there. The Winter League final. And these are big, big crowds. You know, you read back from the days before, 60s, 70s, 80s, and you'd read of thousands of people sitting behind the likes of Ivan Marks. And you just don't get that nowadays, do you? You don't get anglers, apart from Fish O Mania, big crowds, 8,000, I think, last year. John Smith's, which I just mentioned, Maver matched this, perhaps the Golden Rod, Reel. They'll get a few spectators coming along, but mainly locals, you know. This has got people travelling for miles and miles to watch their heroes, really, I guess, to pick up ideas. And it's just something I remember as a kid. I used to go and just wander along the canal when the matches were on and watch them and pick up ideas. And not something, maybe we're just all too busy now. Maybe the only free time that we get, you actually want to be fishing rather than watching it. But perhaps taking and investing a little bit of time in watching could prove dividends in the long run. Interesting. Tackle and tactics, My Way with the Bream, John Allerton. An encounter with a shoal of bream can be the highlight of a match angler's season. John Allerton offers his thoughts on this money-spinning species. He's talking about feeder accuracy, light tackle, whether it's on a rod or on a pole, good conditions, wind direction, very detailed. Possibly not seen an article like that in some time, where it's very easy to read and very specific. The sections are broken down into feeding, wind direction, pinkies, light tackle, the pole. So it's very scripted and for an idiot like me, very easy to read. Finally, we will finish off with Match Fishing magazine. I'm not going to lie, it's literally landed on my doorstep today, so I've not had a chance to read it all. And being conscious of time and wanting to get the latest episode out, I'm going to skim through this and just go through what I've highlighted. So the first article I did read in any sort of depth was something called Bait Wars, page 20. It's Tommy, our good old mate Tommy Pickering, and his daughter Emma, where they're pitting two different bait approaches against each other. Emma with casters, worms, and a ground bait approach, and then Tommy with a micro pellet and a Fuca micros over the top. It's at Bank End Fisheries in Doncaster. It's a place I've always fancied having a crack at. I've read some good articles, drove past it a few times, and I like the idea. It's a very deep water, lots of silvers. I won't tell you who wins, father versus daughter, and I think it was done on International Women's Day as well, so the stars were aligning a little bit. But yeah, have a read of that, because what they've tried to do in the interest of fairness is fish the same distance, the same depth, with the same rig, and see how these different baits stand out. So that's a nice little article. I like that. And at the end, if you are a fan of purchasing from Willy Worms, it's where I tend to get some bait from if I need anything in bulk, if I need it delivering for a festival, etc. So always a good service. They're doing an offer. The bait pack that Emma uses or the bait pack that Tommy uses. So take a look at that one. After that article on page 26 is this gripe of mine that you've probably heard in the past. It's River Trent legend Rob Perkins goes in search of chub using the underused and underrated combination of steak and mince. Today I come to Stoke Ferry Lane section of the Nottingham Trent, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, fantastic, lovely, great article. The rivers are shut. I don't get this. I've said it before. You know, I've seen in Match Fishing magazine articles in October, November that were shot in the middle of summer, so they become null and void. I don't understand. Maybe the only thing I can think of is, of course, they want people to hold on to their magazines. They don't want them going in the old recycling bin, and you will refer back to these. So for me now, if I want to try and fish steak on the River Trent, I'll have to pick this back up in another 3 months in June. So I do get confused. However, on the flip side, a very, very good article. It's by Sean Cameron at Lindholm, and it says 5 things every feeder angler should know. Now, I've only literally skimmed through this article. I've not read it in any depth, but the 5 things are water pressure, the tools of your trade, your feeder choice, where to fish, and the time. How long to fish, in other words. And this will be key for me. I will really get stuck into this and absorb it, because I am not a great feeder angler, certainly not on commercials. I'm probably a little bit better on natural water than I would be on a commercial. So I need to learn as much as I can for feeder fishing. So the Sean Cameron's article, I will be absorbing profusely. Now, in the feeder section as well, our good mate Darren Cox, I ask a lot of our guests on the big chat about big money finals, the preparation needed, the mindset, that's the word, the mindset that you need to not only qualify, but then to get into these final and approach it. Well, Darren's article here says, big final practice brings benefits. This month's Match Fishing regular, Darren Cox, extols the virtues of practice. If you qualified for a final, why not get to know the venue as well as you can beforehand? And he talks through this. This is Larford, which is, of course, some of the big finals are on. So have a read of that, because it gets into that mindset, which I often question on these shows. Now, one that I did read in depth on page 74, and this, I really, really like this type of article, because, again, apart from the regulars that are in Match Fishing, which is great, the regular series, Darren Cox, example, Andy Power, Godfrey, etc., I do find sometimes the names that do the features, it's a little bit samey. So to have somebody completely different and a completely different angle to what they're saying. This one's called A Veteran's Angle. Can an old dog learn new tricks? And it's a chap called John Brooks. Openly admits he's more of a club angler, but does fish opens on his local venue, which is Puddleduck Farm. And he talks about his consistency this last year or two, and how he's managed to reach that at his age. Bit of a strange one because he's 63 and he's, veteran status, if you like. The challenge that we've got as match anglers is that we're getting older. I would be quite young compared to a lot of the people that I fish, and I'm 41. So it is a little bit of a worry. It's probably something we will discuss on the forum with the guys over the coming months. How can we go about bringing newer blood into match fishing? Can we make it easier, etc.? But anyway, this chap would be typical of many anglers that may be a bit stuck in their ways. So how do you go about changing those ways, but not too much? And he talks about coaching. Why not? You might think that you know all there is to know. As we all understand, you never stop learning on the bank. So he openly advocates getting a coach. He's used John Arthur in the past. Talks about sticking to the tactics and methods that you know and doing them well. He also talks about setting your gear up right to ensure that at that age you're not getting aches and pains. And a lot of older anglers would shy away from fishing long on a pole, as an example, when it could be the way forward. So this is good because I like the fact that you bring in someone more normal, if that's the word, rather than an elite match angler, because the vast majority of us are not at that level. And that's why this podcast has been so popular, because we like to listen to those elite anglers and how they go about approaching things. But actually, it's quite nice to read from someone that's doing really, really well at the vast majority of people's level. So Veterans Angle, check that out. You might read it and it could really mirror your day-to-day fishing, or your weekend fishing, should I say. So yes, have a little read of that. Now, speaking of regulars, in the pole section, gearing up for the challenge, Will Raisin. And there's nobody better, really, is there, to be a regular every month in your magazine than Will Raisin. Always very insightful, brings things across really, really well. But he's talking about the Census Challenge, which is taking place on the Gloucester Canal every year. Fish to international rules. And it's one of those that I think the international anglers that we've had on the show, that I've spoken to in the past and I've read, quoted a lot in the angling press, is that they believe there's not enough matches fished to international rules, which obviously has a big effect on our results overseas when it comes to World Championships. So this is a really, really important match in the calendar to ensure that anglers who represent England and the other home nations can fish these types of similar venues to what we would get overseas. Big, deep, powerful, bloodworm usually as well, and really put it through its paces to keep us in that international feel, if you like. So that's a good one. It's a lot of bloodworm fishing, and I know not a lot of people get a chance to do bloodworm fishing as they perhaps used to do. I certainly don't. But again, it's still a good read, and it talks. Don't get me wrong, he's not got a massive net of fish, and actually that's quite refreshing, because a lot of matches are not won with bumper bags on natural venues. So yes, have a little read of that. Good setup, good tactic. I've skimmed through it. I've not read the ins and outs of it, but I like the concept. No Improve Your Course Fishing this month. It's not winged its way to my doorstep just yet, so sadly I can't talk through that one. But of course we will review and look in the tackle shed for match fishing soon as well. So now it's time for the big chat with Warren Martin.
Teddy Fisher Baits specialise in the manufacture of fishing ground bait and additives. We combine a 40-year-old proven fish catching recipe and the experience of our skilled team. Fishing is an adventure, and here at Teddy Fisher, we strive to make that adventure a success. Go to www.teddyfisher.co.uk to see our full range of baits.
Hi and welcome to the very final big chat of its current format. And I'm very, very happy to welcome Matrix-backed 2012 Fish O Mania Champion. It's Mr. Warren Martin. How are you, sir?
Hello, Dave. Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
No, you're more than welcome, mate. And this is, I can't believe it, I started this podcast in around January, February last year, and this is episode 19 already. And we've had a whole host of guests, mainly match anglers, and we're going to mix things up as we hit summer 2022. So you're the last one of this format, But I'll ask you in advance already. I'd love to have you back in the new format, which I'll reveal to the listeners later on in the show. But anyway, how have you been, mate? Obviously, weather's a little bit crazy right now. We had spring really hit us last week, and say I've had snow. So how are you getting on?
We have this morning as well. I came out this morning. I couldn't believe it. Everything was completely covered, and it was a full-on blizzard.
I know, totally bizarre.
And yet I'm still sunburnt from fishing last weekend.
The fish won't know what's going on, will they?
No.
It's one of them. Now, listen, I know you know the format. We've spoke about this before you joined us. We do have a theme. This is like I say, it's the last of this theme before I evolve the podcast. And it's called Past, Present and Future. And for me, one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on the podcast and get you involved was the part of the world where you're from, an absolutely beautiful part of Britain in East Anglia. And I'd never been until last year when we had our family holiday over on the Broads.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to engage anglers from your part of the world and get to know what the match fishing's like there, how you grew up, etc. So where did it all start for you, mate? Because you've got so many types of waters. Where do you? I don't even know. Is it the sea? Is it a lake, a river, or what?
I mean, I started on the River Wensum in a little village called Swanton Morley, where I lived right in the middle of Norfolk. It's probably only 7 or 8. I was fortunate that my dad fished and my granddad fished.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's sort of the traditional route into it, really. So then sort of moved normal thing, joined Dereham and District Angling Club, started winning the junior matches, moved on to the senior matches about sort of 14 or 15 and actually started winning those as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was when I then sort of bullied my dad into starting driving us to some open matches.
It's a common theme. It's that you've got a good support network to help you from the start. And there's another theme that these consistent winners who I interview regularly on this show all began winning opens and senior club matches at an early age as well. So what was your first open around 14, 15 years of age?
First open was probably 16.
Right.
We were fishing places like the River Wensum at Riverside Road in the middle of Norwich. 10 Mile Bank on the Great Ouse, sort of Weybridge pits down in Suffolk, and then sort of gradually went a bit further to the River Cam and the Old Nene. The thing living where I live, it is beautiful, it is lovely, but unless you only fish matches on the Broads, you do have to travel because we're so far out of the way.
Yeah. Is that not increased though? Commercials and whatnot, are they not popping up left, right, and centre, or is it still very much a natural anglers area?
It's ridiculous, really. In the summer, I'm travelling all over the country, going to qualifiers and things, and every Saturday and Sunday, I've got a 100-peg match on a river, 10 minutes from my house, on the River Yare or the River Bure and Thurn. Commercial-wise, around here, there's really 3 main commercials: Barford, Reefham and Meadow Farm. The problem with Norfolk is it's not a densely populated place. If those venues were in the Midlands, you'd have a 50-pegger on there every week on all of them.
Yeah.
But because the pool of anglers isn't that big in Norfolk, they're not big matches. They're sort of like 20 peggers and things like that. So big river matches, we're spoiled. Big commercial matches, we have to travel a bit.
Yeah, no, I'd get it's a similar story where I am. I think it's because there is a reasonable bunch of anglers, but there's so many waters that then thins out.
Yeah, you've got the opposite problem.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's very bizarre. Whereas where I'm from in the northwest, there's so few waters that the attendances are massive. I said before on the show, where you can go to a Thursday Open at Partridge Lakes and there's going to be 100 people. It's crazy. So. But I mean, in terms of growing up on those rivers, you felt that that's stood you in good stead on the commercials? I
still do generally once the qualifiers and that are out of the way, sort of September, October, November. I do catch the end of the season really on the Broad, so I still do a bit of that. But yeah, it definitely stands you in good stead. I always looked at the Drennan Knockout Cup. Yes. You can see as you get through to the final, you can see the people who used to or still do fish canals and fish rivers and fish big canals, and it definitely stands you in good stead. You learn how to catch fish basically, don't you?
100% under tough conditions as well. I mean, it's I know certain parts of those broads and those big rivers, they ball up. If you're not on them, you've got to learn how to extract them from really tough
Yeah,
areas.
yeah. I mean, I
I'm
remember
just
one.
thinking, actually, have I missed a trick? I'm just trying to think. Riverfest. I'm not
Yeah,
thinking of any qualifiers in your neck of the woods, or have I got
I
that
think
wrong?
they have one on the
Right.
I think
Okay.
there is one on the each year, and that's it. I think.
I was going to say, because when you're talking about those types of attendances, 100 peg plus,
Hmm.
sometimes it's a breeding ground for river anglers. So surely they would have qualified. I must have missed that. I mustn't have
No,
looked
I
too
mean, I
much into that.
think the first 2 or 3 matches on the which we're 3 months away, have all sold out already.
Well, there we go. Crikey. Well, I did have a look actually, because I know when I come back from our little family holiday down there, and I know that there's like a Broads Championship
Yeah,
over. I think it's 3 days, and
yeah.
started
You
looking at the
have a
results of that.
2 day festival on the Wednesday and Thursday, and then
Hmm.
the Broads Open is on the Saturday. It's
Fantastic.
one I've always wanted to win. I've fished that most years since I was about 15, and I've never won it.
I was going to say there must be quite a bit of nostalgia there every time you go back and get back on the rivers and sort of mix it up a bit. Is
Yeah,
that is that a target for you then? Is it the Broads Champ?
I've always wanted to win the Broads Open, and would have been the last year it ran before COVID, so 2019. The peg that I didn't fish the 2 day festival, but peg one, which is opposite Candledyke at Martham, had annihilated it both days, and I drew it on the Broads Open, and I thought this is it. One feeder rod, £40 of bream, going to do it. I've had probably £25 in the first hour,
Yeah.
absolutely
Wow.
annihilated it.
Yeah.
And then in the space of 10 minutes, I got cormoranted, ottered, and sealed.
Sealed.
Yep.
That's
With
a bit.
about 10 boats all floating around the area going, oh, look at that lovely seal. Look at that lovely
Oh
cormorant. Look at that
no.
lovely otter. And I ended up with £28.
Oh cry. And what won?
Only about 35,
Oh.
36. But basically, my shoal of bream moved down to my left, and the anglers below me all started catching.
And we're getting eaten by otters and whatnot as well by the sound of it.
What are the chances of all three at the same time?
Oh, smack. Well, when did you first get a taste of commercial waters? Then, if you were growing up on these rivers and you was fishing those club matches and then entered the opens,
I'm
because obviously it was mid to late '90s before they all
yeah,
started kicking in.
I'm sort of that generation that caught the last few years of Drennan Super Leagues and team fishing, angling times winter leagues, and that was all you did. And
Hmm.
then when I was sort of like 18, 19, the first commercial sort of round here popped up, which was a place called East Bilney and Barford. And for a few years, I was sort of doing a combination of the two. I was maybe fishing an open on the commercial on Saturday, and then going and fishing a natural venue or the Winter League or the Super League or something on the Sundays. Um, and I never really made a conscious decision to do one or the other.
Hmm.
I just sort of naturally, without really meaning to, drifted more onto the commercial side,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've never stopped fishing rivers. I will have a little spell each year where I still do it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just sort of naturally drifted over to commercials, really.
Now, I am jumping ahead a little bit here, sort of away from the passive act, but you have had quite a bit of team success, haven't you, in the past?
Um, Not so much on natural venues and that. The problem we used to have on there fishing with Shimano Tom Bolton is that we were always in against Essex when
Hmm.
they were the
The,
superstars.
yeah, the pump, yeah.
And then Hot Rods, Browning Hot Rods sort of took over from them. So we always struggled a bit in those. I think probably the best team result is I had in the second year of Matrix, the year Maver ran the Maver Match this team final, the day
Hmm.
after the main final.
Yes.
We won that as a team, and I won it individually as well. So that was a good result.
But like you say, more commercial focused.
Yeah.
Interesting. So tell me, I'm just thinking. Let me step back. I'm jumping all over the show here. Do you remember your first match win? I always ask everybody that.
I don't remember the first junior match win. I remember my first senior club match win was at a place called Glenwade Common Lakes, and I don't know why I did it, but it was horrific. This venue, it was terrible. And for some reason, I decided to fish bomb and bronze pinky.
All right. What was the thinking? What was the
I don't
thinking
know
behind
why.
that?
And I caught a pound roach and an 8 pound bream. And I think about a pound was second in the match.
Well, you can't argue with that, can you?
So I remember that. And my first open win, I skived off my first year of sixth form. So I would have been 16 because I was always the youngest one in my year at school. So I would have been
Yeah.
16. I skived off and went to a Wednesday open on the Great Ouse at Littleport, which used to be sort of 50, 60 peggers.
Yes.
And I remember because I drew next to Keith Arthur, and I was thinking, oh, blimey, I'm next to Keith Arthur. And I won that with, I think, 9 pound of roach from memory.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was definitely my first open match win.
It's good to remember.
Yeah.
It is. It's good to remember. I always ask everybody that. It's interesting. So from those early days, then first match wins, was it somebody? And again, a similar question I ask a lot of people: did somebody take you under their wing, or did you just find?
I've been very fortunate, really. Obviously, in the early years, it was my dad who taught me the basics and things. But probably once we got to 18 or 19, I was teaching him.
Yes.
But in those years where I was sort of swapping from clubs to opens, there was a guy in the RAF called Dave Woodbridge. Never really made a massive name for himself in an area because he was posted all round the country all the time. But when he was in a certain area for a few years, he would dominate.
Yeah.
And he taught me how to catch roach, basically. He taught me about finesse and fine tackle and presentation and that side of it. So he was a massive help at that time. As I mentioned, we fished for a team called Shimano Tom Bolton, which was based in Tom Bolton's fishing tackle shop. Tom and all the guys in there are a help. Tom sort of financially and with tackle and bait and that as well, because I was at college at that point. And then in later years, you may know, living in the northwest, you don't, but sort of down here in the southeast, he was a legend. A guy called Jimmy Randall.
Yeah, One Sandal Randall.
And do you know why he's called One Sandal Randall?
No.
Because I threw his other sandal in a hedge in a car park one night.
There you go. We all know. Fantastic.
And that was Sid Huggins when he was writing his articles.
Yeah,
came up with the nickname. But no, he's unfortunately died 4 or 5 years ago now after a long battle with cancer. But he was the most intelligent, positive, attacking angler there was. But he wouldn't attack without a reason and an explanation for doing it. He'd understand the fish on the day and then go for it. So he's kind of the one who taught me to win, because he wasn't fishing for a section win or anything like that.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
And he became one of my best friends. Probably the first time I drew next to him was one of my very first opens. He's such a funny guy, but in a sort of sly way. And first few times I drew next to him, he bashed me up. And then I remember drawing next to him at Riverside Road in Norwich one day when I was probably about 19.
Yeah.
And I beat him. And I said, "You will never beat me off the next peg again," being all sort of youthful and brash and all that.
Yeah.
And he didn't until a round of the Barford Winter League, probably 2014. And he beat me off the next peg. He was on the worst peg and he beat me. And the sense of humour and the sort of bloke he is, after his funeral, his wife came up to me and presented me in a properly carved out wooden case with a glass front and everything, with a pole float in it, and with a message saying the float that beat Warren Martin in the Winter League on such and such a date at Railway. So he actually framed that float ready to give to me or be given to me at his funeral.
Wow. That's fantastic.
And that sits on the shelf in my living room still now.
Well, I get an idea of what his sense of humour was all about then, just from that. But let me just pick up on what you said. It was really interesting about the attack in the peg. Well, what dictates that? Did he just think, right, he knows a bit of form of the venue, the weather conditions, he just gets a hunch and then just thinks, right, I'm going for it? Or
his biggest thing was most commercial matches obviously are won in the margins. If you're going to win, you do at some point catch in the margins.
Yeah.
And he would basically never be the first one to go down the margin. He would watch and look and see And then when he did go, it was all about timing. When he went was when the fish wanted to be in the margins, so he could properly attack it.
Yeah.
He wasn't feeding it for hours before, so by the time they come in, there's so much bait there, and it's a mess. He went down the margins when the fish wanted to be there and eat.
Yeah,
and that's something that I've always look at now.
Because I would say I'm obviously not in your lads' league. I'm a club angler, you know, but I'm a very negative angler.
Yeah.
I know that. I know I don't feed enough at times. I know that when I do feed or I'm aggressive, it's probably on the wrong day. You just sort of get it. So I'm just wondering what sort of triggers that you think, right, today, you know, they're going to have a bit of a chew or...
Yeah, I know I'm very much the other way. I know I blow a lot of pegs by being too aggressive. But it's you can't change the way you are, and it's right on the day, and I can't change the way I am, and on the day it can be right or wrong. It's just, I think it's just in your nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll always have a bit of a gamble and go for it, sort of thing.
But the thing is, you're fishing, you know, a lot of qualifiers. You're aiming for big finals, and you've got to win.
Yeah.
You've got to give yourself that chance. So that's probably where that's come to the fore of your mind. When did you start? Move on a little bit, actually, from your first opens and whatnot, a bit more modern times. When did you start thinking about qualifiers? And I mean, because let's think, like, Fish O's been around since '94. God, Maver must have been a fair few years now. So when did you start?
It was 2011, the first major, Maver. So that
over 10 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and that was actually what triggered me, to be honest. I'd never had any interest. I've never had any interest in doing it, to be honest. I'm not like that in life. I never want a bigger house or a better car or a better job. If I'm enjoying what I'm doing and what I've got, I'll stick with it.
Yeah.
And I was enjoying my fishing and loving my fishing, so I'd never really thought about progressing. I'm just not an ambitious person, really. But then first year of Maver Match This, there was a qualifier at Barford at my local venue.
Yes.
And I thought, well, I'll go in for it, and I won it. So all of a sudden then I'm off to Larford with the big boys, travelling, never really travelled. Travelled like to fish Winter League semi-finals and things like that, but not individual events. And I loved it. I was amazed, to be honest, when I got there that people were saying, "Hello, Warren," and I'm thinking, how the hell do you know who I am?
Do you know me? Yeah.
And I just really enjoyed it. I went up there for a week beforehand and practiced. Done no good in the final. I drew between Grant Albert and Des Ship on a venue I'd never fished until that week, and they were regulars. But I didn't make an embarrassment of myself. But it was my first time doing that sort of fishing. I learned a valuable lesson in that I went and read what matches were being won on, how they were all fishing it, and I went and fished meat, which was the in bait there at the time, but not something I've really done much of. So I instantly, from that match, thought, you enjoyed this. I'd already decided next year I was going to go and fish some qualifiers because I really enjoyed myself. But I thought, I'm just going to go to these venues and do my own thing. You can't go and meet the regulars at what they regularly do.
Yeah.
So yeah, the following year I entered a few, not loads. I didn't go mad. I think I had about 4 or 5. The first one I went to was again at my local place, Barford, and I had a chance there. I think I was 5th. Probably could have won if everything went perfect. And then my next one was Messingham Sands up in is it North Lincolnshire?
Yeah.
And I qualified at my second attempt at qualifying for Fish O.
Had you ever fished there before as well?
No, I'd never been there before. Spoke to Kev, the owner, when I drew my peg, and he said, "You've got an island to chuck to. If you're any good on the Waggler, you'll catch shallow to the island." And Waggler fishing, pellet Waggler fishing was kind of the thing that I had made a bit of a name for myself doing. Yeah. I'd had some big weights on pellet wag. And I've had £170 of, I think I had something like 130 fish for £170. They were only little carp.
Not big stamp then, yeah. Like a busy day.
Yeah. And qualified at my second attempt for Fish O.
That's mad.
Yeah.
Would you say, I don't like this term, but you'll know what I mean. So before you qualified for the Maver and then tested the water with the fisher. Would you say he was a bit of a local, like a venue expert, a local expert in
I
your
would
area?
say I was a big fish in a little pond. No disrespect to anyone else, but purely maybe for the number of anglers around here, sort of thing, on commercials, I was winning everything.
Right, exactly. So what my point here is, there'll be hundreds of listeners that are in a similar scenario where they'll
Yeah,
fish their local water probably every weekend or every other weekend.
yeah,
They'll do really well, and they just might be a little bit nervous about, unless the fish show's on their local water, they might
yeah,
think, I actually don't want to travel. I might embarrass myself, like you just said. But actually, the reality is, and we spoke about this with Adam on the last show, is
yeah.
that it's actually quite a nice experience, isn't it? You
It
get
is.
to meet different people, and it can be a good laugh. I
Yeah,
think the virtual draws the last couple of years have taken a bit away, but now that's back.
yeah,
I would say to anybody, have a go at a qualifier.
yeah. And what I would say as well, that the top anglers are in general the friendliest, nicest anglers as well. So you certainly, I mean, I drew between Deadship and Grant Albert, and subsequently, if I've got matches out in the West Midlands sort of thing and I don't want to drive, I go and stay around Grant's house now. You sort of become friends from that sort of thing.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
that's
have to
it.
buy the Chinese if you stay around his house, though.
I always remember actually talk about official qualifier, and it was one that actually put me off a little bit from going to any more. It was at Bouldings.
Yeah.
And that was a bit of a trek for me from when I was living in the
Try it from
northwest.
my house.
Oh God, I can imagine from you. That's a right old trek. Yeah, well, this was at the time I was in Manchester, so it was about 2.5 hours, or whatever. And I
Yeah.
got down there and I drew on it was called the Stock Pond.
Right.
It's never used in matches.
No, I know where you are. Yeah.
One of them, and Grant was on it.
Right.
He was facing me, and there was only like 7 of us on the pond, and I'd call it a pond because it was tiny.
Yeah.
And he won the. So that was our section. He won it with something like, I think he had about £60 fishing shallow, but he was straight facing me, and it was
Yeah.
like having a free lesson. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he was that small and intimate. I could hear everything he was saying. We was all taking the mick out of each other because we was like, why are we on here?
Yeah.
Why is this part of this competition? And you just knew straight away you was not going to qualify off of it. And it was things like that put me off slightly traveling too far. That was one of the things. But I think a lot of that has been ironed out. I think the biggest thing now is people not turning up and leaving space and stuff like that. But
I think this year that will improve against then. That goes back again to, like you say, sort of the online draws and things the night before.
Mm-hmm.
If that day you knew you were going on that pond, you probably wouldn't have bothered going, would you?
Wouldn't have gone down, no. That's right.
So yeah, I think that'll kind of fix itself this year because you're not going to be knowing where you're going.
Yeah, exactly. So that's quite interesting. So first Fish O second attempt, you say, at Fish O qualifier, and you've got through.
Yeah.
So first final would obviously. Well, I mean, I imagine, you tell me, but I imagine that experience was much bigger compared to the Maver final with all the Sky cameras.
Yeah.
Nervous?
Yeah, because it was the first Maver final, it was new. There was a little bit of coverage on TV, but not a lot. But yeah, Fish O was massive. I'd never been to watch one or anything. So yeah, it was I can imagine if you're the wrong type of person, it can completely throw you off.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I'm sort of just quite a laid back, don't really worry about much person. So even on that sort of first attempt, I literally could just really enjoy it. It was brilliant. We went up, Daniel Bryden and myself went up the Saturday before. Obviously back then it was a real mixture of skimmers, barbel, odd big carp, chub. It was all sorts, and we thought going up it was just going to be a chopworm and caster match.
Just for the listeners, sorry to interrupt, Warren. This will be Cudmore
Arena, yeah,
Cudmore,
sorry.
Yeah.
So we went up, we were planning to go up for like 4 or 5 days. The first 2 days we were there, Daniel fished pellets, I fished worm and caster. The end of the second day, we just looked at each other and said, we can go home now, can't we? It was that obvious that's what it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, we came home on the Sunday. We were planning to stay till Wednesday. But came home on the Sunday, and then fortunately that's exactly how it panned out on the day.
And I think to work things out like that, and to I mean, I spoke on the last episode about the importance of a runner and
Yeah,
and having somebody to bounce off of.
yeah.
So Dan there, as you know, what's the benefit of traveling like that? I guess
I
you're
mean, we've
getting,
he's similar age to me. We've sort of fished together since we were 14, 15, worked in the tackle shop on Saturdays at the same time, and
yeah,
um, just he's got very much similar attitude to me. Really, we just have a laugh, have a few beers at night, and if you win, you win. If you don't, we'll try again, sort of thing. We've both got a very, very similar attitude, and we just have a laugh.
yeah,
We don't take it serious. Obviously, it is important, but we do it in a fun way. Like when he actually qualified for the final in 2014, come second to Andy Galdart. He won more fish and he would have won it. He was only about £4 off.
did you run for him that day?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, we went up and practiced, had a laugh, enjoyed ourselves on the day, and he's come second. He's still won himself £5,000, and probably the best day in his fishing life ever. And mine was the best day in mine because we just
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
yeah, fantastic. So tell us about the final then. When you had the draws the night before,
Yeah,
usually few beers, nice and relaxed, bookies there, all the rest of it, all the good
yeah.
stuff. When you drew, did you fancy it? Was it a form area?
No. Subsequently, it did become the form area. But when in that final, basically pegs 1 and 16, the end pegs,
Yes.
that dominated pretty much ever since it had been at Cudmore.
Did they have blockers then?
No, the ladies' match was in between,
Yes, got it.
but you still had a bit of an extra gap with the boom for the cables and everything going over to the island.
Yeah.
1 and 16 had just been completely dominant, so literally they were the only pegs everyone wanted.
Mm.
I drew peg 4, which hadn't been any good, but like I say, I've won off it. And then every year it was still at Cudmore after that. I think it was one between 3 and 7.
Mm.
So it was kind of a surprise the year I won from there. But then, as it turns out, that's become the new form area for some reason.
Now, obviously, as time moved on, it moved away from Cudmore and then, came across back over this way. A water, actually, that I know that you fish quite a bit, isn't it?
Hayfield.
Adams Lake and, on Hayfield.
Yeah.
Did you make it to any of those finals on
No,
there? Or was you close?
I thought you might ask me that, so I went back in my diary and I've had a look. And since I've won it, I've been second at Woodland View by £3.
Yeah.
I've been second at Nakins by £5.
Oh God.
I've been second at Larford by £5, Decoy by £2 and £7, and the Glebe by £8.
Oh my word!
So I've had some.
Unlucky.
I think the Woodland View. I think Decoy might have been a maver where I lost by £2 on the Wednesday, and then I went to a fish show at Woodland View on the Saturday and come second by £3.
Oh, you, what can you do? I mean, you can talk about lost fish and all the rest of it. What's the point?
Yeah. No, so I've had some. Actually, the Saturday after I won Fish O, I thought I'm going to try and get a maver again now, being all like on a high and confident and all that.
Yeah.
And the following Saturday, I went to Tunnel Barn Farm in the maver and come second by £5 there the week after winning Fish O.
You'll be called Grant Albert carrying on like that with the amount of seconds he's had.
Yeah. No, he's had more than me, hasn't he?
Yeah. Wow. No, I'm just thinking, because I was just trying to recall. I don't remember you being on. I don't think it's been there, the last 3 years. Now it's coming over this way to Westwood this summer. But
Yeah.
I was just thinking, because I know that is a venue that would suit you very well. There's a lot of Pellet Waggler fishing, there's a lot of bomb fishing.
To be fair, Hayfield is the venue that should suit me the most ever, because it's very, very similar to Barford. It's big carp in deep water on pellet wags and bombs and things like that. But no disrespect to the regulars at Barford, because I'm one of them.
Yeah.
The standard of the regulars at Hayfield is a lot higher.
Mm-hmm.
So me going with what I think's my high spec modern Waggler rigs to Hayfield actually aren't. I need to step it up a bit and become more up to date. I mean, we had a Matrix day just before lockdown, I think it was, at Bath. We'd like to test some new products and things like that. And mine and Jamie Hughes's job on the day was Wagglers. And he's just walked up, picked my rod up before the start, laughed, and chucked it in the reeds.
Is that right?
And then I've walked up to him and looked at his setup and thought, yeah, I am a bit behind with this. So subsequently, after that day, I've had to completely rethink and redo the way I waggler fish now.
Are we talking about? I'm just guessing here. I mean, you can put me right. Are we talking that he's refined it more, a bit more finesse compared to perhaps those dumpy wagglers that you might have had set up? Perhaps?
Yeah, because when he gets something in his head, he just becomes obsessed with it and has to perfect it.
Mm-hmm.
Pellet waggler fishing wasn't really something he'd done. So as soon as the final moved to Hayfield, his obsession became the best waggler setup you could ever have, sort of thing. So he sort of worked on it, got it more refined. The attachments that he's using that will never tangle, the floats he's using, just everything about it has got it to as near perfect as he can, because he knew the finals were going to be there for a few years and he knew he'd probably qualify for them. So,
which he did, yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't been back because of COVID and stuff. I haven't been back to Hayfield since I've got my new setup, so it'll be interesting to see.
yeah, exactly. Oh, well, that's really interesting. And do you find that with the whole Matrix piece, meeting the lads and lasses when you do on these days, and does it help you? Do you get new ideas? Because as I say, and it goes back to right at the start of our conversation, is that you are in an absolutely stunning part of the world, but it is a little bit isolated, and you know, you're not mixing with these guys on a regular basis.
No, that's the advantage of travelling and fishing the qualifiers and going to Matrix days. And even like at Christmas, we went and had a Christmas meal in Birmingham, sort of thing, and you have a chat with them and meet them all. And the higher standard of angler you fish with and against, the better you will become, basically. So it definitely helps fishing with Jamie and John.
What about the other way around? Have you learnt any of those bits and pieces that perhaps they'd not considered?
Oh yeah, I think it works. It works both ways. Probably not with Jamie, but with some of the other guys, like go out shooting for a day with John Arthur. If I'm fishing and he's filming and things, he might sort of pick something up and go, "What's that?" And I'll explain it to him, and he might go away thinking, "Oh yeah, I could incorporate that." And it works both ways, definitely.
Do you like doing the films?
I didn't to start with. I'm a very private person. Or not private, shy maybe. I don't know. But I found it awkward to start with. But then being dropped in at the deep end, being obviously filmed on Fish O and talking to the studio.
Yes.
And then the following year, I was invited back to be Keith Arthur's studio guest live on Sky Sports, sort of thing. Yeah. So that's properly being dumped in at the deep end. And after that, I thought, actually, just doing a little clip for Facebook or something isn't that big a deal, really.
No, not everybody can do it though. That's the thing. Certainly live TV, that is for sure. You know, it is quite a difficult thing to do, and especially when you've got to try and catch fish on tap for a commercial video or a product video or whatever. I imagine that at first it takes some getting used to. But I remember watching you do one not that long ago actually on decoy. Weather wasn't great. I think it might have been early, about this time last year, perhaps.
Right.
And I always remember watching it and thinking, I think you went through about 3 or 4 methods.
That's right. Yeah, Waggler feeder and pole, I think it was one.
Really interesting, and you could just tell it's like, well, actually, you know, I think he's enjoying this. Catching fish in like pretty chilly weather, and so I thought
I could have been at work that day. So sitting there filming a fishing DVD is a bit more enjoyable, isn't it?
It depends what your job is, but I would say so.
Yeah,
as they say, a bad day's fishing is better than a good day's work.
Yeah.
Talking about then the finals and the qualifiers and all that side of things, you're going to go for it this year? Have you got some qualifiers penciled in?
Yeah, I'm gonna go for it properly this year. 2000 October 2016, I made it to the Drennan Knockout Cup final, which was the one that I'd always wanted to win. I'd always wanted to win that, and I finally got to the final at Docklow.
Yeah,
and it's a 2-day thing, and I lost by £7 over 2 days.
Who was you against that year? Was that Tom Stoneleigh?
No, it was Ian Didcott, Robbie Griffiths, and Steve Barraclough.
Yes.
And Robbie won it. It was very tight, and Robbie won it in the end. But the week after that, I hurt my back, and I then basically didn't fish for 2 years. So I've come back sort of October 2018, but I couldn't really travel a long way for the sort of following year because it would just aggravate my back. So I pretty much stayed local, and then 2019 got into it a bit more, fished quite a few, or maybe 7 or 8 qualifiers that year, sort of the closer ones to me.
Yeah.
Thought, right, I'm fit again now. We're going to properly hit it in 2020. And then COVID.
Yes.
So this year with it, last year it was after we could match fish again. The matches were so crammed in and so condensed. You couldn't really do many because all the qualifiers were done in like 3 months. So this year is really the first year without COVID and without my back being bad that's back to normal. So yeah, I'm going to give it a proper go again this year.
What about Westwood? It's not far from me. It's only down the road.
Yeah, that's only an hour and 10 for me. So that's
closer for you. Would it suit you? It's a very different. It's going to be a lot of shallow fishing, a lot of F1s.
It doesn't really
compact venue.
Yeah, it doesn't really. I mean, I used to fish Westwood quite a lot when it was sort of skylark more than anywhere. I've only really fished Swallow and Falcon a couple of times, but being where it is, I could put plenty of time in leading up to it, which would obviously help. I mean, an hour and 10 minutes down the road's nothing. So, yeah, I could put being where it is would massively help me because I could put the time in, and I know I'm friends with a lot of the lads who fish it week in, week out as well. So, yeah, I could put some time in there, so that would be handy for me.
Well, fingers crossed for you. Fingers crossed for you, that is for sure. Well, good. I look forward to seeing your campaign. I think I've only got one or two. I went for a laugh. I've not fished qualifiers for years. I've got a Riverfest ticket this year, and I've got one qualifier just to go and experience and enjoy. I've not done it for years. Up at
on the Trent or?
The Riverfest on the Trent in August, and Lindholm Fish O is end of June, I want to say. Yeah,
I'll see you there. I think I've got Lindholm.
Oh, good. I'll see a few. I reckon I'll see a few guests on here because I know and Nick Speed will be there, that's for sure, and Alex. So we'll see them. No, it was good. But let's. That's great. We've covered off how you started there. We spoke a little bit about getting into the qualifiers, making the final, and obviously some of the plans there that we've got for this season. Let's talk tactics.
Right.
Because I wanted to pick your brains a little bit on the very subjects that we've already discussed, and that is you are well known for fishing a waggler.
Yeah.
And I actually fished a Fish O qualifier, and we drew the same. It was the Adams Lake at Hayfield.
Okay.
And you was on the opposite bank to me, and you did fish a Pellet Waggler, and you was like Windy Miller. You obviously cast very often. You know what I mean? Like casting, feeding, casting, feed. It's a busy method, isn't it, when you do it? But just to sort of get into the mindset a little bit, is on these deeper waters, which I really enjoy fishing Pellet Waggler, when something's above, I say deep, it's not deep, but 6 foot plus.
Yeah.
I really enjoy fishing Pellet Waggler, but I never know where to start. So what would be your advice to myself, the listeners, about start deep, work your way up, look for line bites? What's the thought process? Exactly that.
I mean, take Barford, for example, was probably 10 to 11 foot deep.
Yeah.
So in the summer, in the height of summer, obviously, if it's boiling hot, then you wouldn't consider going deep, shallow. But I fished Barford about 3 weeks ago, and it was just warming up, so you would catch shallow. But I've started at probably 8 foot deep.
Right, so only 3 foot at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, you just a liner on the Pellet Waggler is what looks like the most positive bite in the world, but there's nothing there.
Yeah.
So you get a few of those, and I basically just sort of shallow up foot by foot. I have had days where 6 inches up or down has made a difference. But yeah, if you're getting what look like unmissable bites and you're missing them, they're liners. So just keep shallowing up gradually and until you find the fish. The thing you've got to remember to do while you're doing that and becoming shallower is you've got to keep the feeding constant. Because if you alter your feed in any way, that could make them go up or down.
The regulation of the
Yeah.
fish. So does that include not just the regularity? Does that include the quantity?
Massively, yeah.
Got you.
Yeah. So yeah, while you're trying to find the depth the fish are happy at, keep your feeding the same. Once you've found that depth, then you can mess around your feeding to try and get bites quicker, basically.
Got you.
The first maybe hour of a pellet waggler match is keeping your feeding steady and altering your depth and finding where they are. So that you then know where they're happiest, and then you can play around with your feed to try and get the most bites.
See, I think I'm terrible at that. It was one, I think I discussed it with Darren Cox on one of the earlier episodes, because I read an article that he did I think it was in Match Fishing. And one of the things that he was saying was when you're rotating lines, don't forget that the line you're now not fishing, you must feed exactly the same as you were doing when you were fishing it.
Yeah.
Which is like what you're saying there. And,
Yeah.
and I know I don't. I know that I'm all of a sudden I've gone from maybe maybe I was putting a dozen maggots through a toss pot or whatever when I was fishing that line. And I think, well, I'll throw some maggots over the top. Well, hold on a minute. Straight away, they're spreading out. I'm probably not counting how many I'm putting in. And I'm just not feeding it the same as when I was fishing it. So that's a similar principle, but this is while you're fishing that line.
Yeah.
So I get that, because if, like you say, if you would go all of a sudden from 6 pellets to a dozen, then they're going to sink quick. They're going to go further down before they get out and whatnot.
Yeah, that might push the fish down, and all of a sudden you get a couple, and you think, oh, I found the depth they're at now, and then you go back to feeding your 2 or 3 pellets, and you'll stop catching. That's because the fish have gone back now to sit where they want to sit.
Yeah. No,
so
really,
need to find
really
where they want to be first.
I've got a question there as well. I always, how do you attach your hook length? Are you going loop to loop, or do you use like a little swivel?
No, I always go loop to loop.
Do you not get spin up?
Very, very rarely. Very rarely.
I always use a little barrel swivel, which obviously doesn't give a natural fall.
No. When I wouldn't want to swivel on the line when I'm fishing shallow, because it is unnatural. When I'm fishing the pellet waggler, say over 4 foot deep, I do always have shot down my line. Maybe
you do?
Maybe only 3 number 9s, but in that instance, if you wanted to use a swivel, I don't think it'd affect it, because the swivel.
Is that just to straighten your line out?
Yeah, if you drop it, if you set a waggler, even with like an 8mm pellet or something 5 foot deep, and just swing it in front of you and watch it, it falls unnaturally. The pellet will sink, the hook length will sort of loop up out of the water into the air, and then gradually go down. Then the bit near your float, near the loading, that'll sink first as well, and it kind of sinks down in an N shape, because your pellet's heavy and your float's heavy, but the bit in the middle's slack. So I like to have 2 or 3 shot down the line just to make it all fall naturally.
Yeah, no, I like it. That makes sense. Good. Food for thought then, pellet waggler. What about this? When would you consider fishing a bomb over the same line, like a lot of people do?
I'd pretty much always have one set up to chuck over it. That's probably... I think you've just always got to have one set up, to be honest, to chuck over it. Again, keep feeding the same. If I chucked a bomb out and it went round and I hadn't been catching on the waggler, then I would alter my feeding. I would feed probably two pouchfuls, a lot less regular, to then try and keep them on the bottom.
Yeah.
I sometimes think, to be honest, after you've fished the waggler for half an hour, you've pretty much messed your bomb line up anyway, to be fair. Because there's far too many. If you're not catching on the waggler and all the pellets are getting to the bottom, your bomb line's pretty much ruined.
You're never going to find your bait.
No. But I would always have it set up just to chuck. Sometimes if if I fed a load of bait on the waggler sort of thing and I'm not caught and I want to chuck a bomb, I'll probably chuck it 3 or 4 metres beyond where I've been feeding the waggler line.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you've fed the waggler for half an hour or an hour, your bomb line's messed up, so you might as well chuck a bit beyond it.
All right. Well, final question then, Pellet Waggler, because I wanted to pick your brains on that. Location. So obviously, if you know that there is some bars or, there's a gravel area, whatever, you're naturally going to aim towards that. But big open water, I'll give you an example. One I fish, you'll know it, Loco, Lindo.
Yeah.
How on earth do you know where to start on a water like that if you want to fish that pellet waggler and bomb setup?
Generally, I think the basic rule is you've got to fish the waggler where you towards the further limit of where you can fish, but where you can still feed. Feeding is everything. Feeding is everything on the waggler. So is the wind going to get up? Is it in my face? Is it left to right? If it does get up, can I still feed accurately where I'm fishing? So that's the thing that decides it for me on a big open water like that, is what is the maximum I'm going to be able to accurately feed all day, really.
Good point. And I guess you could put that thinking about long distance feeder fishing.
Yeah.
Because if you're not,
same thing, flat calm at the start and you're chucking 80 yards, but you know that the gale force wind's going to get up during the match, then you know you're not going to be able to get there at the end.
That's it. Good tips, Pellet Waggler. Well, tell me then, keeping on the tactic theme, what would be, I would say, you're known for that tactic, if you like, but what would be your favourite tactic?
It's got to be stick float on a river.
I see. Well, there we go. Something slightly different. So not something perhaps you're synonymous with.
No.
But where would you, is that something that you do when you pleasure fishing? Do you like to get out, have a couple of hours stick float fishing now and then?
It's something I still love to do. I've done it a few weeks ago, just a bait apron, a landing net, a stick float rod, and just have a wander along the River Wensum.
Yeah.
Just have a wander along a few pegs, run a stick, maybe catch a dace. Realistically, you've got a chance of a 2-pound roach in a few spots.
Wow.
But yeah, I was dying to do it, but the river was in flood most of the time from Christmas. But we did have a week sort of just at the end of the season, and yeah, I just had to wander along where I used to fish as a kid, just with a stick float rod and a landing net, and yeah, love it.
Wonderful. But tell me about the Wensum, because it gets. I think last time I read, I think we did it on the press piece not long ago. That as a venue has been pretty much written off the last few years, but I know there's a lot of focus on local clubs coming together and trying to tackle pollution, trying to tackle some tributaries, things like that. Yeah. Whatever happened to the river? I mean, from the days of, you said before about Sid Huggins' article, and John Wilson used to be down there go fishing. It seemed to just fall off a cliff a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the Sid Huggins match bit would be the tidal bit in what we call Riverside Road, right in the middle of Norwich.
Is that near the ground?
Yeah, sort of. You used to go, there'd be a section below the football ground, then the football ground, and then about 50, 70 pegs upstream of that.
Right, wow.
But it's just massively been redeveloped. It's now nightclubs, bars, apartments, flats. So access is probably the main reason that the match has stopped. Because there's nowhere to park and you can't ship, and you're now shipping your pole back into a beer garden and things like that.
Right. Wow.
But they still have a few club matches on what they call the yacht station section, which is upstream of the train station. But there doesn't seem to be the roach there anymore. If it's coloured, they catch bream. But when it's clear, there doesn't seem to be the roach. I don't know whether it's predation. There's been an otter or 2 otters there all this winter. Obviously cormorants, but there just doesn't seem to be. The actual number of fish in the Broadland system is incredible now. There's more fish in the Broads than I've ever known, but they don't seem to go into their traditional winter hideouts now.
Holes, yeah.
Some boatyards at Stalham, excuse me, on the River Ant, where ever since we used to go pleasure fishing there when I was sort of 12 years old. Every winter, the fish push in there in the winter to hide in the boatyards under the boats and things like that. But this year, the Stalham club matches on there have been being won with ounces.
Wow.
They just don't seem to go into their old traditional places anymore.
Interesting. And it's funny because you mentioned these names now and actually know where you mean, whereas
Yeah,
12 months ago I wouldn't have had a clue. But I would say to anybody genuinely listening, it was like an epiphany for me when we went down. It went in September. One of the only reasons why was because of we'd booked, we're thinking that we couldn't go overseas and all the
yeah,
rest of it. And what a great decision. What a wonderful
yeah.
part of the world. I wonder why that is. Temperature stayed a bit higher than normal, perhaps.
Don't know.
Clarity.
Don't
Really,
know.
really strange.
Yeah. No, a boat on the Broads in the summer, or literally, I think, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you could moor a boat anywhere on the River Bure, Thurne, and Ant, anywhere you like, and you will catch skimmers and bream as well as roach. It is just absolutely solid.
Well, I wasn't far from Potter Heigham,
Yeah,
and that's obviously a massive tourist area
yeah,
where that was like our nearest shop. I stayed on Hickling Broad, but
right.
I drove down to Potter because that's the nearest shops.
Yeah,
And you'd have a wander along the river. That's free fishing as
yeah.
well. Um, and it was loads of people that had, I mean, they didn't, some of them had just had a bit of basic kit where they just brought a bit on holiday, some proper match anglers, everybody was catching
It's
skimmers.
solid. It's
Unbelievable. And this is a really, really busy, bustling, it's like a little
yeah.
tourist resort.
Oh yeah.
The fish are not scared
No.
of coming in. And I mean, the only thing which I guess would have, there were a lot of them were fishing feeder, which would make sense because the tide was quite strong.
Yeah.
Um, but it doesn't matter what the tide was, everybody was catching skim, hand size,
Yeah.
like 6 ounce.
Yeah. It's absolutely solid, and you get the odd bigger one. There's sort of noted pegs for the bigger bream,
Mm.
but wherever you sit, you get the odd better fish. I mean, the massive thing on there, it used to be all sort of flat floats, sort of
Yes.
6 or 7 meters on the bit you're talking about at Potter
Yeah.
Iron. But last year, the short feeder chuck seemed to be better than the flat float for
That's
some
how
reason.
most
I don't
people
know.
fishing.
So
Interestingly, as well, sort of pointing the rod right downstream,
yeah,
almost pointing it at the feeder
yeah,
and fishing it almost like for pure dropbacks, basically.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it was just everybody you could say, even the tackle shop down there, you'd say, how's your summer been? And they'd say, oh, it's just been great because people are starting to realize how great the fishing is, and
yeah,
it's free.
yeah, yeah. No,
So
it is the Yare is an awesome river, but it is a bit more peggy. But the Bure and the Thurne are just absolutely solid. It's, to me, it's got to be. I know, like the Y and places like that have their days when they're out of this world with barbel or bleak or whatever, but then they're prone to flooding and you can't fish them. But for consistency, the Bure and the Thurne, you can go down at any day on any peg and catch 20, 30 pound of skimmers. It's just unbelievable.
yeah, no, wonderful. I've got to get back this summer and just try and get a few days down
Yeah,
there. And I'd actually love to fish a few matches. I wouldn't expect to do very well, but I get the feeling from the people that I met, certainly no one's shy with information. They
no,
put you right. That is
no,
for sure.
absolutely not. No.
Yeah. So no, wonderful, love it. Stick float as well, Wensum. I think as well. When I was reading about this Wensum regeneration piece,
Mm.
I didn't realise that in the past, not recent past as well, there's been like £15 barbel.
Yeah, that's a stretch not far from me, really. The best NACA owned it, Norfolk Anglers Conservation Association. Stretch from a village called Ling, where I used to live, to Lenwade, probably 3 or 4 miles.
Hmm.
That was, like, for a while, the best stretch of barbel river in the country. It was unbelievable, the fish they used to catch out of there.
I think that they were just like old fish that had died off and they've never like bred on.
I think that and otters.
Again, yeah.
Yeah. But interestingly, as I said, I used to live there, so the pub in Ling I still sort of class as my local,
Yeah.
and that's not far from the Millpool. One night in the summer, I just wandered down there when I was in the pub and looked over the bridge, and I saw maybe 7 or 8 barbel, about 3 or 4 pound.
Oh,
So whether they're making a comeback gradually or not, I don't know.
good
But
signs.
I've never seen barbel of that size in there before. It was like you said, a 15 pounder or nothing.
Yeah, they were all
Uh,
big fish. Yeah.
Yeah, but now, yeah, there was a shoal of smaller barbel, so I have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, great. So I like that. I like the fact that you mix it up a bit along with the qualifiers and the other stuff that you want, your opens on your local fisheries and whatnot. Like you say, just getting an apron on, a couple of pints of maggots, have a wander down.
I mean, like now till September will be manic, flat out travelling qualifiers and things like that, which is why then once that's all over for the year, I'd sort of fish a few matches on the Broads and fish a few matches here and there and sort of have a bit of a chill out in the winter time, because the next 6 months now is going to be chaos.
How many miles do you reckon that you travel over that summer period?
I mean, I class a venue 3 hours away as close.
Wow.
I think I've got the qualifier at Makins. That's brilliant. That's only 3 hours.
Yeah.
Lindholme free at Hayfield, Hallcroft. They're all 3 hours, and I class them as a nice sort of quick journey sort of thing.
Wow. And with
obviously Decoy and Westwood are the two closest.
True, yeah, Decoy, yeah. With fuel prices as they are as well, it's these days can build up, can't they?
Company fuel card, it's the way forward.
Good lads. I like the sound of that as well. I need one of them, that is for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that is us really. That is an hour. That has absolutely flown by. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem.
As I say, this will be the last of what we call the big chat before we go into a new format. And we'll speak about that separate. You might be something you want to get involved with.
No problem. Love to, yeah.
Yeah, no, muchly appreciated. Thank you. Is that a word? Much appreciated. So, Warren Martin, thanks for the big chat.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
For all your fishing needs, be sure to check out Fishing Evolution. Boasting 2 floors of branded displays, visit our recently expanded superstore at Hadley Road in Sleaford, where we offer a huge range of tackle from all of the leading coarse and carp brands, such as Nash, Fox, Corda, Drennan, Preston, Guru, Daiwa, and many, many more. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, where we share all of the latest news and updates about products available in store.
Okay, it's now time to dive into the virtual tackle shed. We can pick up that archived magazine of match fishing from 1996. We can look at the recent one that's just landed on the doorstep also. There's a few bits and pieces online that I've spotted, but I think to start off with, be quite good actually to talk about the big one show, which I've just come back from at Stoneleigh. It's the second one of the year. There was one earlier on this year at Farnborough. I believe that was a lot busier because it was cancelled a couple of years ago with COVID, and those that had bought tickets could keep their ticket for future events or claim a refund. Well, lots of those anglers down there kept their ticket and used it for this year's show. So that's the reason why I believe it was a wee bit busier at Farnborough. In terms of the one that we visited, we wasn't at Farnborough, so that's myself and the guys from the Teddy Fisher Bait stand. Saturday was really interesting because it was super busy early, probably from about 9:30 till 9:30 midday. We were rushed off our feet. And the reason why we went as a brand was pretty much for education. It was about getting people to see our baits, smell them, feel them, see them in practice in the tanks, etc., and explain to people what the brand was all about and tell the story. Being an online only company is very, very difficult to try and get buy-in from consumers. If they can't get their hands onto the product, it's quite difficult. So it was all about education, and we were super busy. What I would say was in terms of conversion, i.e. every person that we interacted with then purchased the products, was very, very high. I think in general, in the main, customers were excited by certainly our natural range, and were certainly surprised by what we had to offer and the story of who they are. I don't really talk about the Teddy Fisher brand that supports this podcast, but I guess now's a good time to, really, given what we've just done at the big one. So the brand has been around for a very, very long time, over 30 years. It hails from Poland, and essentially over the years, under various guises and names, and the chap that Mr. Ted, let's call him that, his name is a Polish chap. His recipes have been very, very popular across Poland, Germany, and Switzerland since the 90s. Came to this country around 2012 under a different brand, Ted Fisher it was called, and the branding was all white and red, and was used to great effect by the Ossett team a few years ago for their Winter League success. But then there was a few changes in sort of ownership, partnerships, and the chat with the recipes needed to rebrand with the guys that run the business now to the name Teddy Fisher. So only a couple of letters extra, but very, very different branding. The same recipes that have been around for a long, long time. And mainly premium cereal mixes. So the old school Census, Van der Nijl, the natural range. What we've been working on as a small team for the last probably 12, 18 months is trying to create products for the commercial market here in the UK. We know there's a bit of an obsession with fish meals, crushed pellets, etc. So we've introduced that, and that's where the Excite and Rival range have come from. And they were very popular on Sunday, so the second day of the Big One show. I knocked a bag of the Green Rival range up, which is, hence the name, would rival the likes of a green swim stim or a special G mix, something like that. And the punters were very, very impressed. So we sold a lot of that product on Sunday. So that's the evolution really of the brand. Those tried and tested mixes that have been around a long, long time. We sold out of all of the Canal range on Saturday. We had to restock for Sunday. Nearly all of the Roach. Very fine, dark mixes that, again, very popular. And again, you could put them up against any of the natural ranges from the other competitors for sure. But obviously, being a small company, 2 or 3 chaps running that company, they've not got the marketing budgets and the time to compete against the likes of your Sonia Bates, your Dynamite, etc. But nevertheless, that was the idea of the Big One show. Loads of engagement, some really, really good sales, and hopefully, those guys that go and try that bait now, that we sold a bit of everything, to be honest. Pellets went through the roof on Sunday also, some really interesting pellets. Not Coppens or Scretons that a lot of the tackle companies here use. These come from Europe. And people start catching fish on these, then hopefully they'll come back to our website, spread the word, and who knows, we may get into a few shops as well. So it was great to be on the stand, but what about the show in general? Well, I'm going to be completely honest, I'd say it was a lot quieter than I expected it. But we are the first year after a pandemic where, there's been these types of exhibition shows. What we need really is probably the bigger brands, your Preston, Matrix, Gurus of the world, to be there, Browning, Frenzy, etc. And then what that will do is help the smaller companies, because they've come to see the big companies, but then they see the benefits of some of the smaller ones. But the guys that were there, what was I impressed with? Well, Shimano, they had a stand set up with a virtual simulator. Let's put it one way, there was a few sweaty heads on that stand as they tried to bring in anything from bass to tuna, sailfish, etc. So that was a popular one. The Colmick guys, that was a very, very popular stand just facing where we were. And I must say, I didn't get a chance to sit on the pole alley. There was a new Maver one, which I'd heard rumours. It's not even got any branding, straight from Italy. Callum Dix was showing everybody that, but I didn't get a chance to sit down and feel that. But everybody I spoke to said they were super impressed. The one I did get to play with was the Nuclear from Colmick, and there's some real interesting features of that. Super strong cupping kit for when you're feeding heavy balls of ground bait, natural waters, but at the same time, loads of carp top kits as well. I think there was well over a dozen in that package. Just a really interesting concept, lots of different ideas, and felt really, really balanced as well. I think I had it at 14.5, left about half a metre behind me just across the leg, and you could hit bites, no issue at all, just by a lift of the knee. So that was really impressive. Lots of smaller companies in there, like float companies, lots of carp bait companies were in there as well. The talks from the people that were penciled into talks, so Nick Speed, Dave Lyons from Tackling Minds, Bob Roberts, Ali Hamady, all of them really, really positive and packed. And we noticed that when things did go quiet, it was because there was a show on, and pretty much every seat in the house was taken up by listening to those shows. Out in the big arena as well, the Maver was out there. They didn't have a huge range with them, but they had a lot of bargain buckets and things like that. So yeah, it was one of those where it was busy in periods, peaks and troughs, I'd say. It felt like we spoke to more people on Sunday than we did on Saturday, but I think Saturday we just had a really busy period before it went very quiet in the afternoon. So is it something we'd do again? Absolutely. Was it good for brand awareness? 100%. Is it something that we think will drive extra sales online? We hope so. So yeah, the guys, Tom and Artur that run the business, and the advocates, if you like, we worked really hard to try and get the message across, and I think it was really interesting. It's the first show that I've worked on, if you like, and it's the first show I've been and visited for a number of years. The last one I went to was the Northern show in Manchester. So yeah, it's great to see these exhibitions back. That's the key thing out of it, and I'm sure next year will be bigger and better than ever. Okay, on to magazines, match fishing, up to date, modern stuff. First thing I picked out, Tony Curd, and he is new. He's now he's left his map role as a consultant now. I don't know what he did for work full-time wise, but he's got a job now with Match Fishing magazine, so that's good. You've got a modern match angler that can fish many different types of venues. So I'm sure he'll bring new ideas to the magazine. But here he's done like a feature, if you like, a feeder fishing feature, testing some new rods, and these are called I think I said this right, Xenos Advance, Xenos. They're from Browning, and they are 3 in the range of feeder rods. They go from 3 long rods, by the way, super long butts as well, 3.3 meters right up to 4.2 meters, starting £120 up to 180. And these are all about long range casting, as always, bream at a distance, whether it be via method, cage feeder, etc. But pretty much, I mean, 4.2 meters is a beast of a rod, isn't it? And they look interesting and good value for money as well. Into the actual new gear section of the magazine, some liquids from Willy Worms, some floats from Bennick Sports, everything from Bolognese through to like pencil floats. There's another feeder rod here from MAP, which is a 10-foot Parabolics Ultra 2. It's going to be more of your commercial fishery style compared to those Browning ones. New tournament feeder reel from Daiwa, 435 quid, so real high end, down to a more affordable Shimano Sahara at £75. But one thing that I know has gone down well and sold out pretty quick in our local Fishing Evolution shop is the Preston's hard case luggage range, the new stuff. So they've got their tackle safe standard hard case 70 quid, the hard case kit safe 100, and the hard case pole safe 120. So these hard space saving pieces of kit pretty much all now the top manufacturers have got a version of, and they're coming in at similar price ranges as well. Not something I'm looking to invest in yet. I'm quite happy with my traditional hold all, but certainly something that I'm seeing more and more on the bank. Oxbox, the D36 seat box. I have to say the Oxbox guys were facing our stand at the big one, and they were permanently busy. They did quite a number of pre-ordered sales as well, focusing on, I guess, you know, like we all do. You ask what type of fishing the punters are doing, and you try and match what you think would work really well. So they had a powered version, you know, so no more back-breaking, pushing. A lot of these are powered as well. So all those guys did tons and tons of pre-order, so I imagine you'll see a lot more Oxboxes on the bank. Akuma Seimar XC Match FD reel. Not a lot of you will know this, but Akuma is now distributed through Normark and Dynamite Baits. So there's going to be a big focus on Akuma reels into the marketplace this year. It's probably why you'll see Dynamite backed anglers perhaps promote them and the crossover there. I've had a play with a few of these Akuma reels, and in terms of value for money, I don't think you can go wrong. Lots of ball bearings, real good gear ratios, etc. So there's one here, this one's Seimar, 57 quid. You know, real interesting price point that would suit both club, open anglers, pleasure anglers as well. What else have we got here? Well, the big thing last 2 weeks, this Sonia Bates spring collection. They've done a huge launch this year, whether it be the match method mix, new bags of paste, tons of like pellet oils and liquids, and some new band and wafters as well. So they've come out with a real big aggressive push for this summer. So that is match fishing. That's all the stuff in the new gear section. Onto a product launch from Matrix. Hot off the press, really. I had an email off the Fish Matrix. If you not follow Fish Matrix, it might well be worth going. fishmatrix.co.uk. Sign up. You can enter some exclusive competitions, etc. And you also get emails in advance of product launches like I have. The only thing is I can't seem to change the currency from euros to pounds. So all these new products are priced in euros, but Matrix waist waders. Now these do appeal to me. I bought some chest waders last year, which are fine, but they're hot in summer. No good if it's sort of 20 odd degrees. You can't be having these on. So these waist waders could be good. So the price it's showing is €75. So imagine that's going to be sort of 60 odd quid. Long landing net handle, 4.5 meters. Power landing net handle, €130. Matrix Ethos 3.5 meter handle, so a little bit less, €120. Some chest waders, a 24 kit roost, a 12 kit roost, and then the real interesting thing that I spotted is this Horizon X multi-pole holder with a whopping price of €250. It's basically an 8-tube hold all with like a hard kit case attached. And it looks massive. So certainly not saving any space from what I can see. It looks like you need a van to carry that, but not one to knock because I've not seen it yet. And I'm sure it will suit a lot of anglers. I imagine those fishing festivals, you're away for a week or so. You need to take the kitchen sink with you. That would certainly suit. But for me, that's way too big for my fishing. I'd rather have 2 separate holdalls, to be honest, and pick one up depending on where I'm going. Suiting the venue I'm fishing, but that's just me. I'm sure it will do well, as always. Probably well made and looks the part from Matrix as well. So they're new, which came through this morning on the Fish Matrix channel. And 2 other final things that have caught my eye. I've not had a chance to try them yet. I really like the look of this new range of hooks from Drennan, the Acolyte. We spoke slightly about them last month. Drennan hooks for me have always been the go-to ones for 30 years plus. Drennan and Kamazan, same company. Faultless, really. I use the Guru ones as well for commercial fishing, but in general, certainly Drennan on natural water. So I'm interested in them. Another thing, look, these little Cresta worm cases. I wouldn't mind getting one of these. It's sort of like an EVA bait tub, if you like, but with like a mesh part at the top, making it breathable for in this case, worms. So that was something that I've seen floating around online, promoted by a couple of different tackle shops, and something that I might try and pick up at some point. So they are the things, all things modern. But how about yesteryear? So let's pick up the match fishing from June 96 and dive to page 69. New concept match rods from TriCast, new for 96.97. You've got the XDS 13 to 15 foot extending rod, a unique concept to TriCast, which now creates a more versatile rod for an aspiring matchman or pleasure angler. It goes from 13 to 15 foot without having to break down tackle and retains maximum casting ability and action by using a split butt ring. Now, the reason why I picked that one out is because Drennan, I've just brought out an extendable distance feeder rod, 13 foot plus, and I've just spoken about that 4.2 meter Browning one, and this is like something in between, but this is 26 years ago. So this isn't a new feature in terms of extending rods. TriCast were doing it back then with this XDS version. I'm trying to find the price, but I can't seem to, which tells a bit of a tale. I imagine it was quite expensive. They also come out of a Pellet Waggler rod, 12 foot, the Zenith Canal 12-foot rod is an absolute gem which displays the sweetest of actions while retaining deceptive power. 14 rods in our new comprehensive range: Integra, Illumina, Finesse, and XRS Power Match. I love TriCast gear. I don't think I've covered it once on any of these podcasts, and I should do, really. Talk about tried and tested. I have a small, it's called, I think it's XK4 or X4S, can't remember the lettering, a carp wand. I'm sure those that know TriCast gear will know what I'm talking about. A little 8-foot thing. I've had it for years. Probably the best bit of kit I've got. I bought it second hand, but it was like new, and it's like elastic. You know, you can play carp on it. You can play little skimmers, little roach with its 1/4 ounce tip. or you can use the 1.5 ounce tip for commercials. And it's always in my bag, even on a canal snake lake. If it gets windy, I want to chuck a little feeder across to the far bank. It's just perfect for things like that. It's probably one of my favourite pieces of kit. I really like TriCast gear. I don't know what's going on with them. I actually reached out to them to see if they wanted to join us on the podcast to give a UK company's perspective of tackle, because they are a UK company, one of the very few. Their carbon comes from the manufacturing in the aerospace world, which is why it's so good. But yeah, there were no plans for anything new. So if anybody knows what's going on with TriCast, then fill me in, because I'd love to know. I really like it. And being a northern lad, it's from Rochdale, which is up the road from where I'm from. I was always a big advocate and a big fan of TriCast. Anyway, that was on towards the back in the tackle section. So let's find the actual tackle bit. What's new, it's called, original name. So you had MIDI Original Pete Warren sticks. £2 a piece, must have for river anglers. Still got a few in my box now. I think they were this version as well, certainly not the first version. The Choppy Mix by Census. And I am a big fan of specific chopworm ground baits, which don't seem to exist as much as they used to do. I was talking a lot, actually, over the weekend about something called Wizzo Purple Haze. That's what I used to use back in the late 90s. I was a big fan of that. We tried to recreate it. Teddy Fisher, a purple ground bait, just couldn't quite get there. But we did stumble upon something what we call Special Blue. So there is a blue ground bait that's been really popular and ideal for this type of sort of chop worm fishing. But this Census one, at the time, cheapest ships, £1.99 for a 700 gram bag. Preston but Hooks Pinch Barbless. Hinder's Mega Hemp. Still use Hinder's Chinese hemp now. Leader Blue Diamond Keep Net, £42. So keep nets haven't actually gone up much over the years. It seems to be a similar price. You get a good keep net for £40 nowadays. If we go into some of the bigger tackle shops, Fisherman's Friend, let's try and find a more localised tackle shop. Here we go. Acton Angling, where our good old friend Keith Arthur used to manage for many, many moons. What are they selling? Matchbox. I think we've covered these before, Matchboxes. Standard Canal Flat Top, £282, 4-seater. Pole seat, £296. And what else have we got? So let's have a look in Foster's of Birmingham. Maver Jurassic Carp. I remember these, £299. What do you get for that? An 11 metre. You can buy an extension for 12 and extension to 12.5 metre was £50. Extension to 14 metres £50. So basically $399 for a 14 metre pole. Don't think you got any extra top kits. Browning luggage special competition holder, £100. Pole holder, £50. The DAM Millennium 2000 12.5 metre pole, ultra slim, light, only 800 grams. That is light. Stiff, will handle quality fish up to a number 8 elastic. Fully take apart, 2 top 3 kits, free of charge, £420 or £70 over 6 months. So yeah, I love looking back at these, just to see the differences in price then and now. Funnily enough though, a chap came up to me at the big one, was talking about sort of classic gear, and we spoke about Normark rods. We just discussed them actually. Titan rods that are changing hands 25 years later for good money. Well, the original price, the Titan 2000, this is with Oakley's Fishing Tackle, which is in Sheffield, was in Sheffield, whether it's still there, I don't know. Selling Normark rods, Normark Titan 13 foot, £341. That was then in 1996. They're not fetching that sort of money at the minute, but they're not far off, so they do hold their value. Avenger 1000, 13 foot, £206. Microlight, that was a popular one, 13 foot, £350. So those Normark rods, apparently, guy was telling me they still hold their value. So there we go. That is it for this episode of 2 Pints of Maggots and a Packet of Hooks. For all of you that came along to the Big One show and said hello, thank you very much. It was mainly to see the bait, which is fantastic. Hopefully, you can take a look online and see the extended range. this is the last format as it is. I'm not saying that I won't do another big chat on a one-to-one basis. That could be the case, absolutely. But I'd like this forum where we get a number of anglers and different perspectives where they're interacting with each other and not just sort of like me asking questions. But I need your help. I need you to give me subjects. So do drop me a message. Email me at eastwoodangling@gmail.com. Send me a message on Facebook. Whatever you need to do. Let me know. What would you like the guys to talk about? So who are going to be those that are going to join me on the very first one, which is probably going to be around May time. I've got to coordinate 3 people now rather than just the one. But first of all, we're going to have Darren Cox. So Garbolino boss, all-round legend, all-round Mr. Nice Guy. What he doesn't know about match fishing can be written on the back of a stamp. We're going to have Alex Doherty again from Lindholm Lakes, Drennan-backed, Golden Rod winner. And we're also have something slightly different. I can't pronounce his second name. I could, but I'll make a mess of it. But he's called Tony. He's a legend from Improve Your Course Fishing. He is their chief feature writer. And what we're going to get Tony involved with is I'm going to ask him, what makes a great feature in a magazine, and also how can we get the perfect catch shot? So he can give us some tips on that, and he can explain how we say his second name, because it's a very difficult one. So there we go. Thanks for listening, and we'll speak soon on the next episode.